It is that time of the week. It is the good and bad matchups that you should be targeting or avoiding for week 5 of the fantasy football season. As always, like and subscribe. We are on our way to 700 subscribers. Help us get there. If you're new to the channel, new to this video, what we've been doing each week is we've been looking at some players that have good matchups and bad matchups for fantasy football and telling you these things so that you can be informed and make the decision on whether or not you should be starting or sitting them. Now, we are not talking about obvious players like Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, and CeeDee Lamb. Those guys you're starting and you're not going to bench no matter what, right? And we're not talking about obvious players like Mac Hollins. Oh, bench Mac Hollins, because you're always going to be benching Mac Hollins. We're talking about more of the fringe players, the more guys that you could possibly be making a decision this week. Should I start them? Should I bench them? And we're doing pretty good this year, guys. Overall, we're hitting at a 60% rate. So 60% of the players either saying we have a good or bad matchup have good or bad games. We are really killing it in the bad matchup section. In the bad matchup section, we're hitting at a 68% rate, missing at a 32% rate. So the players that have bad matchups, almost 70% of the time are having bad games. So we're really hitting in that area. Hopefully it will help you win your week. And we're just going to jump right into it here, starting off with Mr. Bo Nix. Bo Nix. Now, in single quarterback leagues, I'm not starting Bo Nix. In Superflex, DFS, whatever you want to call it, I potentially will think about starting Mr. Bo Nix going up against the Raiders. I think that's a really good matchup for Bo Nix. And when it comes to the quarterbacks, what we're trying to look at here is the offensive line versus defensive line matchup, right? And looking at the matchup here, the Broncos versus the Raiders. Broncos offensive line has been great this year, only giving up pressures on 23% of their dropbacks, and only 6% of those are being converted into sacks. So if Max Crosby is also out, that's an even bigger plus for Bo Nix. Don't mind taking a dart throw at him in a super flex league or maybe for DFS. Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker Mayfield's a little bit of a cheat because he's like a top 5 quarterback this year. I think he's QB2, actually. He does have a really, really good matchup in case you were debating on whether to sit him or not. He's ranked as the consensus QB 11. He's going up against the Falcons. I like that matchup on Thursday night for him. It is at Atlanta, but that's not too far of a road trip for them. But yeah, I like the matchup. Buccaneers have been pretty good at preventing sacks. Not so great at preventing pressure rate. But Atlanta's sack conversion rate is not very high. So I like this matchup for Baker. I think he could possibly shred the Falcons defense tonight. And then Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's another one where you're, going back and forth on whether you should start him or not. QB 14 last week. We did say he had a tough matchup last week, and that kind of came true. This week, though, I like his matchup against Arizona. Arizona's pass rush is not that great. Although their defensive line is playing a little bit better, I will say that. But the 49ers are just, they're really good at protecting Brock Purdy, only giving up a sack rate of 7% on pressure rates. Meaning 7% of the pressures that teams get are only turning into sacks. So like that for Brock Purdy. Into the bad matchups, Dak Prescott. Mentioned Dak Prescott as a bad matchup last week, and it kind of came true. Put up 16.7 points in 4-point per passing touchdown. You're expecting a little bit more from Dak. So I consider that a hit. If Dak's kind of a low-end QB1, it's not terrible, but it's not what you're expecting from him. I really don't like the matchup for Dallas this week against the Steelers. Steelers could not get after the quarterback. What was it playing? They're in their last week's matchup, was it to the Colts? And, I think they're going to correct that. Dallas's offensive line has not been good. 26% pressure rate, 26% sack rate. Pittsburgh, almost a 30% pressure rate, almost a 25% sack rate. So I don't like this matchup for Dak. They have no run game. This could just be a low-scoring type of game, and that's what Pittsburgh wants to play. Jaden Daniels. Now, I will come out and say I am not benching Jaden Daniels. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not benching Jaden Daniels, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a rookie game from Jaden Daniels this week. He's going up against the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns have a really good defensive line. And Washington, actually, their offensive line has been pretty good. I think a lot of that has to do with Jaden Daniels getting the ball out quickly. They're only giving up a sack conversion on 4% of pressures and only 22% pressure rate for the Commanders' offensive line. But again, I think a lot of that has to do with Jaden Daniels and the type of offense they run, a lot of screens. 36% pressure rate for the Cleveland Browns defensive line. That is top 5 in the NFL. And they have a sack rate, I believe, just double checking here, of 21%, which is, I think top 15 in the NFL, maybe top 12. If we're going to see a rookie game from Jaden Daniels, it's going to be this week. That being said, I'm starting Jaden Daniels because he's been awesome. How can you bench a guy that's been, a top 5 quarterback each of the last 2 weeks? Geno Smith. There's actually a lot of quarterbacks that have bad matchups this week. Geno Smith, I think, is another one that has a bad matchup. Now, I will come out and say I mentioned Geno Smith having a bad matchup against the Lions last week, and that didn't come to fruition because Geno Smith was the QB8 last week. He's the QB10 in consensus rankings this week, and that says week 4, by the way, guys. I meant to change that to week 5, which I did, I believe, for the running backs. But Geno Smith is going up against the New York Giants, and the New York Giants are showing they have a pretty good defensive line. They were why I was worried about Dak last week, and it kind of came true. Pressure rate for 31% for the New York Giants. They're giving up the Seattle Seahawks a pressure rate of 33%. Of Geno Smith's dropbacks are pressured, which means that's the highest. That's tied for first in the entire NFL. The offensive line for the Seahawks is not doing a good job at pressuring Geno, protecting Geno. That being said, Geno's playing pretty well under pressure. So, if I can, I might avoid Geno this week because I do think the Giants have a good pass rush, and I'm worried about the Seattle trying to protecting him. Last bad matchup here is actually Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow going up against the Ravens. The Ravens are always notoriously a bad team to go up against. They are second in the NFL in pressure rate. The Ravens are, I believe it's second in the NFL at 37%, and 22% of those fall into sacks. So they have a pretty high sack conversion rate as well. Both of those are top 5 in the NFL. Don't love that for Joe Burrow. Plus their pass defense is really good as well. So all those things combined, I'm trying to bench Joe Burrow if I can. I don't know what kind of quarterback room you have, but if I can bench Joe Burrow, I don't mind it. Going into the good matchups for the running backs, Kareem Hunt. Now, a little bit, Clyde Edwards-Helaire may play. That could muddy the waters a little bit. That being said, Kareem Hunt was RB26 last week, coming back off, for his first game all year. He seems to be the guy. I love the matchup for Kansas City going up against New Orleans. Kansas City's run blocking offensive line versus New Orleans run stopping offensive line. They give up 1.46, New Orleans, 1.46 yards per carry before contact. That means every time the running back's touching the ball, on average, they're 1.5 yards down the field before they're getting contacted. That is 4th worst in the entire NFL. I like that from Kareem Hunt and the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, the passing game is going to struggle without Rashee Rice. I think we could be seeing a good top 24 week for Kareem Hunt. I would not be surprised. Najee Harris has a good matchup, and he could be kind of the only guy here. Najee Harris is going up against the Cowboys. The Cowboys are giving up 1.56 yards before contact. Their run defense is not very good this year. 1.56 yards. That means you're getting 1.5 yards every carry before you're being touched. So even if you fall forward, you're getting another 2-3 yards. You're basically getting 3-4 yards every carry on average against the Dallas Cowboys. I just had a brain fart right there. Excuse me. So I like that for Pittsburgh. I like that their offensive line going up against the Dallas Cowboys defensive line. And again, Najee Harris. No Jaylen Warren, probably. No Cordell Patterson. So it's going to be all Najee Harris here. If we're going to see a top 15 week from Najee, I think this is the week. And I think at worst, you're probably getting top 24. DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, man. Are we really going to fall for this? Are we going to start him after 3 straight weeks of just dog water, absolutely disappointing us, and then he comes out when no one starts him and puts up 26 points, and then we're all going to start him? Is he going to put up another 5.2 points? It's very, very possible. That being said, I like the matchup, Chicago going up against Carolina. The way to beat Carolina, well, you can beat Carolina in a lot of ways, but how teams are beating Carolina this week is by running the ball down their throat. And Chicago is doing a pretty good job with their run blocking, 1.41 yards before contact. They are allowing to their running back, so they're doing a pretty good job at blocking. Are we starting DeAndre Swift? I don't know. Good luck if you are. He does have a good matchup, so if that sways you a little bit, then there you have it. And only one bad matchup for running backs here. Again, I think Breece Hall has a bad matchup, but we're starting Breece Hall, right? I think that's about it, really. Breece Hall is kind of the only one that has a bad matchup, but we're obviously starting Breece Hall. But Rachaad White, I also think Tampa Bay going up against Atlanta, I think the way they're going to beat them is through the air a little bit. Atlanta is only giving up 1.05 yards before contact to running backs. Compared to that to the Cowboys. So the Cowboys on average are giving up 1.5 yards before contact, The Falcons are giving up only 1.05, right? That's the best, tied for the best in the entire NFL. So don't love that for Rachaad White, who's already kind of an inefficient rusher, or Bucky Irving, to be honest. Obviously Rachaad White can do it through the passing game, and that could happen this week for sure. But if I can kind of fade Rachaad White for tonight, I think I might. Into the wide receivers, we got several with good matchups. Christian Kirk. I like Christian Kirk's matchup here. He's going to be going up against Chris Lamons, and I like that for him. I think we could see another Christian Kirk game. By the way, that's for the Indianapolis Colts. I think we could see another potential Christian Kirk game here. We've had 2 good weeks in a row. I predicted the week 3 good week. Did not predict last week, but he did have a good week. He caught a touchdown, I believe. But he's going to go up against Chris Lamons. Chris Lamons is giving up 2.12 yards per route he's covering. That's a lot, guys. That's a lot. That is a hell of a lot. That is worse than the entire NFL. So I love this matchup for Christian Kirk. Think we could be seeing another Christian Kirk game. Josh Downs in the same game going up against Jerry and Jones. I like this matchup for Josh Downs. Now, if Joe Flacco plays, I like it even more. If he doesn't play, I'm a little bit nervous with Anthony Richardson. I want to see a game with him and Josh Downs. That being said, if I had to start Josh Downs, I'm okay with it. I think he's going to be matched up a lot with Jerry and Jones. Jerry and Jones is giving up 1.8 yards per route covered, which is another really good number. We saw Josh Downs be wide receiver 8 last week, had a good week. So I think we could see another one. And there was a connection with Anthony Richardson and Josh Downs. Obviously, if Joe Flacco starts, it would be even better. And I think he's kind of a no-brainer start, in my opinion. Demario Douglas, a lot of slot guys on the good list here. Demario Douglas is consensus ranking wide receiver 62. If you're looking for an absolute dart throw this week, I think Demario Douglas is going to be one of those. I always forget how to say this guy's name. Kader Kuhe for the Miami Dolphins, slot cornerback for the Miami Dolphins, has kind of had a tough year this year. Kader, that is, if hopefully I'm saying that right. I don't like getting people's names wrong, but he's giving a target percentage of 18%. Kader is. So I really like this matchup for Demario Douglas. I think he could kind of feast in the slot here. In PPR, I like it a lot more. And by the way, catch percentage is 71%. So 71% of the passes being thrown into Kader's coverage are being caught, which is a really, really high number. So love that for Kader as well, or for Demario Douglas. And then Khalil Shakir. He keeps popping up on this list. There's not a lot of good slot cornerbacks in the NFL, is what I'm learning. So I like this matchup for Khalil Shakir. Once again, he's kind of getting to the point of, it's almost cheating to have him, because he's, what is he, a top 24 receiver this year? I think he is. He's only wide receiver 46 in half PPR. Okay. I didn't know that. I thought he was a little bit better. 8.2 points last week. He almost had that big touchdown. He's going up against Jalen Petrie. They have really good outside corners, the Texans. Their slot corner, I think you can take advantage of him. So I think I could see another Khalil Shakir game here. I'm not saying Petrie's bad. Petrie's a pretty good player, but it feels like this is going to be the way to beat the Texans is to target Khalil Shakir. So really like Khalil Shakir this year and this game as well. And then Dontavian Wicks. If you're thinking about starting him, he was the wide receiver 3 last week. He's going up probably against Kobe Durant and Tre'Davious White. The Rams are kind of a team we want to be targeting. We want to be targeting teams like the Rams. So I like Wicks' matchup, who, by the way, I don't think a lot of people realize this. He's going to be playing and running more. He's going to be playing more snaps and running more routes than Jaden Reed. I'm not saying he's going to be better than Jaden Reed, but Jaden Reed only is out there with 3 wide receiver sets. It's going to be Dobbs and Wicks out there on 2 wide receiver sets. So he's going to run the most routes. Him and Dobbs are going to run like the most routes and play the highest snap percentage on the team, in my opinion. So we could be seeing good things from Dontavian Wicks. All the Packers receivers are in play, in my opinion. Bad matchups. Tank Dell, who has not been good to start the year. He missed last week. Just haven't seen the boom games from Tank Dell. Now he's going up against Buffalo. I tell you guys every single week, Buffalo does not give up the long plays. That's why tight ends do well against them. That's why Greg Dortch did well against them week 1. That's why Christian Kirk did well against them in week 3. And I predicted that. They don't give up. They just say, you can have all the underneath stuff. We're going to bank on you getting a holding penalty, and that sets your offense back. Just don't be this deep. So Christian Benford, Rasul Douglas are going to be shutting down Tank Dell. I think it's more of a Stephon Diggs, Dalton Schultz type of game. Nico Collins will get his. Worried about Dell this week if you were thinking about starting him. Xavier Worthy, I think, has a really bad matchup against Paulson Adebo and Marshawn Lattimore. I think a lot of people are going to be thinking about starting Worthy because of Rashee Rice being out. Well, he has to be the only one. It might be more of a run game / Travis Kelce / whoever else is going to be catching passes for them. Worthy only needs that one play. It's kind of like Jameson Williams last week. I said Jameson Williams has a bad matchup against the Seahawks. Now, he caught the one pass, but he only had 2 targets. And if he didn't have that one catch for a touchdown, it would have been disappointing. Now, Worthy can give you that 170-yard touchdown play, right? But I don't think he's going to get many targets. I think he's going to be kind of shut down by these guys. And I think they're going to try and beat him. But if he does get that one big play, he's going to make your week for you, which is appealing for these type of players. Xavier Legette, I always forget how to say this one, going up against the Bears, Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson. Legette was wide receiver 13 last week. A lot of people are going to be seeing a rookie who in week 4 had his best game, thinking this is the rookie breakout. I'd be a little bit worried going up against the Bears. The Bears defense is legit. This could be a little bit of a defensive struggle. Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson are really good cornerbacks, and they could potentially shut down Xavier Legette, and you might have to beat them in the slot with Deontay Johnson. And then Wan'Dale Robinson I have as a bad matchup. I think a lot of people are going to think about starting him as well. Wan'Dale, that is, because Malik Neighbors is going to be out, right? Potentially. And Wan'Dale's been pretty damn good this year. If you look at the numbers in half PPR, Wan'Dale's wide receiver 27. In full PPR, he's wide receiver 22. So he's obviously much better in full than half PPR. But I don't think it's a very good matchup for Wan'Dale Robinson. I think we're going to see him being mostly matched up on Devin Witherspoon, if I had to guess. And him being the only wide receiver, he probably will see some Tariq Woolen as well. But him being the only wide receiver out there, if Malik Neighbors is out there, I think it's better for Wan'Dale. Him being the guy, they can focus a little bit more on him, and I think Witherspoon could shut him down in the slot. On to the tight ends, guys. It's been tough year for tight ends. Colby Parkinson, I think, has a good matchup against Quay Walker. Now, Parkinson hasn't been quite as good as we thought this year, but we could see a solid low-end tight end 1 or top 15 tight end week for Colby Parkinson. Hopefully he can get you 7 or 8 half PPR points. I think he can take advantage of the matchup of the Packers going up against Quay Walker. Tucker Kraft, the Rams are a team to target in this game. So going up against Christian Roseboom, Obviously, Tucker Kraft was picked up on a lot of people's waiver wires. He was the tight end 2 last week. He's a top 10 tight end this year to start the year. He could have a really good matchup as well. I think he's a pretty good start, especially with Christian Watson out. I think that opens things up for Tucker Kraft a little bit more. And then Dalton Schultz going up against Terrell Bernard. Dalton Schultz. Again, it's the Bills, right? What's the way to beat the Bills? You dink and dunk. That's why slot corners over the middle of the field type of players. I think this is a Stephon Diggs, Dalton Schultz game, not so much a Tank Dell game, maybe a Nico Collins game. Obviously, you're starting Nico Collins, but they're going to maybe leave the middle of the field open. So I think that's going to benefit a guy like Dalton Schultz. And then 2 bad matchups for tight ends I have. Trey McBride. Now, I'm going to start Trey McBride because tight end is a wasteland. And Trey McBride is still one of the better tight ends out there. But he's going up against San Francisco and Fred Warner. Don't love that for him. Think it could be a very tough week for Trey McBride coming off of that concussion. Hopefully he plays, and I'm going to start him. But just know he has a really, really, really tough matchup. And then Pat Freiermuth. Now, I mentioned Pat Freiermuth as a tough matchup last week. Well, he was tight end 3, so I missed on that. I do think he has another tough matchup here in DeMarvion Overshown of the Cowboys. I think he could take advantage, or he could get shut down a little bit. Pat Freiermuth, that is. So not too excited for Freiermuth this week. Think it's going to be a big Najee game, like I mentioned before. But Pat Freiermuth is also like a top 5 tight end this year, so I'm going to be starting him. But just keep in mind he could have a bad matchup. So there you have it, guys. This is my good and bad matchups of Week 5. We'll see if we keep hitting at a 60% rate or if we increase that. Good luck this week, guys. I hope you all win, and I will see you all very, very shortly.